Hey YouTube, I'm Ali. Welcome to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. I wasn't sure what I was going to say there, was I? Today I'm going to take a little break from my game design session, my songeon. Is that a word? Yeah, probably. Into game design and understanding how board games are made. If you're interested in that, don't worry, there will be plenty more to come later on. But for today, I'm going to take a little break and explain, or review rather, a game that I've been playing recently that I picked up on Kickstarter. I actually have been in contact with the developer as well. Who knows, if you guys are interested in an interview with him, let me know and I'll get him on the old Skype and we'll have a chat. But today, importantly, I'm going to be talking about Kiitos, a really clever and really fun, I think, word game. A very simple word game based on a bunch of cards. And for some reason with a Finnish title. There we go. So what exactly is Kiitos? Well, Kiitos is a card game based on words. Cards like these are used. This is the letter T, in case you've never seen one. Now, Kiitos actually is a Finnish word that means thank you, and thank you is what you say when someone else completes a word that you've suggested during the game, and that is the crux of this game. Let's a quick look at how you play, a very quick look at how you play. I'm not going to go into depth because there are plenty of videos out there that talk about this. This is more about how you win. To win, it's a victory point game. Once again, you're going to win points at the end of each round, and you're either going to win positive points or negative points or no points at all. To win some positive points, as player one, I might put down a single letter, and each player will always put down one card. I'm going to put down the letter T, and I'm going to declare a word like toes, T-O-E-S. The next player will look at his hand of cards, and each person has 8 cards, and they will say, oh, I have an O, which is the next letter in the word toes. I can play that, and therefore I must play that, toes. It goes on to the third player, who then puts down an E from his hand because he happens to have one, and it goes to the fourth player who puts down an S because he happens to have one. Now the word toes is created, and that's joyous for player one because he suggested it. He will then collect 4 points because there are 4 cards, so he gets plus 4 points. Now let's replay that. If player 1 had put down a T and player 2 had put down an O, player 3 decides that, well, not decides, he realizes that he cannot put down an E because he doesn't have one to put down, but he does have an A. Player 3 can change the word we're looking for from toes to toast. T-O-A-S-T. Now, once again, he has to make use of the cards that are already on the board, so he has to make use of the T and O. He has to be able to put down a third card, which he's doing, the A there, and he's got to declare a new word that's longer than just what's already on the board. So he's going to say toast, like I said. And so play continues likewise. And in this case, it's player 3 who would get the point because he suggested the word toast. But let's say he doesn't have an A, he doesn't have an S, he doesn't have anything. In fact, he has a random collection of silly words, silly letters, and he can't think of anything. Well, in that case, he's got to pass his go, collect these 2 cards, and record them as negative points, which is marked by turning them upside down. So he records a minus 2 points. The person who suggested toes doesn't get anything. The person who suggested toast doesn't get anything. The person who's collecting the cards gets minus 2 points. In this way, at the end of the round, you add up, at the end of the game, you add up how many points you've got, plus positives and negatives, and you get a sum total. Highest total wins. There we go. That's Kiitos. Nice cards, by the way. So what do we get in the box? Well, here is the little box. And what I like about this immediately is that it is a nice, solid, chunky box, just big enough for the actual cards themselves. Perfect for travel. Nice magnetic clasp on there. Very, very clear and simple to open. What I like about it too is that it has a distribution chart here. Not all letters are represented by the cards, and some letters are represented more often than others. For example, there are 5 A's, but only 1 J. This is important as it comes into play as part of the strategy of playing this game. Now, the rule book is a little booklet. It's pretty straightforward. The font's a little small. There's quite a lot of writing and a lot of pictures. But honestly, it takes a couple of seconds to read and get the gist of what you need to do. So it's pretty straightforward. Fits nicely in the box. Talking of which, we have a divider. I'm going to just tip these cards out, and I'm going to show you that there are, in fact, a bunch of word cards. This is what you play the game with, predominantly with these word cards. So that's them. These are player card size. They're not particularly thick. They're perfectly usable. I can't see them being bent out of shape, particularly when you play. I mean, I think they're pretty standard. So yeah, good sized cards. Now you also get some other cards that you may or may not choose to play with. The first are a bunch of challenge cards. Challenge cards are played when you don't believe that the person has a legitimate word. If they say something that you've never heard of, you can challenge them. You can then use a dictionary to look up and see whether or not that word does indeed exist. What I really like about this game is you get to dictate what the dictionary is going to be way ahead of time. You might decide it's dictionary.com or the Oxford Collins Dictionary, or in fact you might decide that if it's a word that appears within, I don't know, the Count of Monte Cristo, then it's a legitimate word, and if it appears outside of that, it's not. Anyway, the point of these cards is basically they're handed to someone when you decide you want to challenge. You can pick them up from a pile and say, I'm going to challenge that word. If you're right in that challenge and the word doesn't exist, the person who declared the word has to take the challenge card and it counts negatively towards them. If you're wrong in your challenge and the word does exist, you take this card and it counts negatively towards your point total at the end. Now, the other cards that are given are extra rules. They're sort of flavors and changes to the rules. I'm not going to go into those because, quite frankly, you should get the game and check them out yourself. But the point is, there's a little more strategy if you want, or a little bit more in the game if you particularly want it. I've not had to play with these yet, or not wanted to play with these yet, because honestly, the game as it stands is quite good fun. Now, the cards are double-sided, which you probably would have seen there, and this puck is simply used, it's a little plastic puck, it's used to determine which card you next need to swap over when you do play with those second set of rules. But like I said, I'm not going to talk about those just yet because these cards are perfectly fine. And there we go, that is Kiitos and what you get in the box. There. On then to describing the game. Well, I would start by audience, as I always do. This is very much a family-based game, I think. It's on the box it says 12 plus. I think I would agree. There's no adult themes here, unless you want to spell particularly rude and silly words, like I would. But in terms of difficulty, I would say that there is a little bit of skill in trying to muster up letters that you can use to spell particular words. And it's not easy. It's not easy coming up with letters, more than 4-letter words on the fly. It's not easy using the cards in your hand to come up with new words on the fly either. So I would say 12 or over is probably quite right. The best probably age group is slightly older, I think, with this one. In terms of number of players, the box says 2 to 4. There's no reason why I would doubt that. Could you push to 5? Well, it's one of those games where you have a number of cards and that's the only limitation. So yeah, I think you could push to 5. I can't see the game being broken by doing so. Can you go beyond that? No, I don't think so. Ideal number of players? Well, I played it with 2, I played it with 3, I played it with 4. I enjoyed it all the way through equally with those. I can't say there's any particular group of people, a particular number of people I'd play with. So for argument's sake, I'm going to say best played with 4, but only because I think the more the merrier. This is just as much fun with 2 people as it was with 4, though. That's what I'm trying to say there. Now, in terms of duration, this is an odd one. When we first started playing the game, I think it went way too quick. And it went way too quick because we were terrible at it. We kept on trying to go for long words and scored very badly. And so the rounds were over very quickly and the game very quickly ground to a halt. So about 15 minutes. As we got better at it, the game took a little longer. By the time 4 of us playing had really got into it, and after about the 4th or 5th game, I think we're on to about 35 to 40 minutes. So I'm going to call it 35 minutes is what I would say here for 4 people playing. Now, if you haven't already guessed, this is very much a card game. Can you play it when traveling? I think you can, absolutely. This is a brilliant travel game. All you need is a bit of space to be able to spell a word out and you're golden. In terms of rules, this was a very simple game to explain. It took less than a minute for us to read the rules. We kind of glanced over them very quickly. So about a minute to read the rules and about the same amount of time to explain them to someone new. So yeah, very simple rule set. In terms of complexity of gameplay, gameplay, though, I would say there is a little bit more to it here. So I'm going to call this a medium depth kind of game. And the reason being is because I think there are some strategies you can use. You can choose to have words with a lot more vowels or not, or longer words or shorter words. In terms of interactions, I'm going to say this is indirect conflict. Yeah, you're against everyone. You're not aiming for any particular individual, and there's no way for you to physically? There's no way for you to actually stop someone doing something directly, but you can mess them up by not having the cards to play in your hand, or not thinking of a word in that way. So yeah, there is a bit of indirect conflict there, I would say. And finally, is this a single person game, or can you play this as a team? No, I don't think you can play this as a team, or even a couple, as I think I mentioned before. You've really got to play this on your own. Though, I mean, you could play it as a couple, you could play all games as couples, but as a team, no, it's not a team game. It's a single person game. Now, in terms of mechanics, I'm going to say there are three. The first one I'm going to say is probably pattern matching. You're trying to make words up, so that's what I'm deciding or deciphering as pattern matching. It's the creation of words. So the second one I'm going to suggest is probably memory, actually. Knowing what a person cannot play will help you and understand what words you should choose to enable them to play something. So I think that that's a bit of memory there. And the third is probably a bit of hand management. So loosely, the fact that you've got cards in your hand, you're kind of I mean, I could say card drafting instead, but really it's about managing your hand and making sure you're using up the right cards at the right time. There are some cards that don't appear very often. You probably want to get rid of those quite quickly because it might become difficult. So you might want to get rid of them when you know you've got a load of vowels, for example, being played. So you can get rid of those awkward cards. But anyway, yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Those three mechanics. Now, when it comes to theme, I can't say that Kiitos has much of theme. It is a word game after all. But what I can talk about instead is language use. Now, one of the fears I had about using this game or playing this game is that I, as a Brit, spell words differently than an American, say, would spell a word. So colour and colour are spelt with the addition or the omission of a U, depending on your viewpoint. Would that affect you playing this game? Well, actually, one of the really clever things about this game is that you decide the dictionary and the spelling of things. So I might decide to use dictionary.com. If it's spelt the way I spell it in dictionary.com, then it's good to go in the game. But the clever thing, and the way I interpreted this ruling, was that I could use anything as a reference point. I could, for example, say if the word appears in Alice and the Looking Glass, then it's good by me. Your dictionary is defined by you guys as players right at the beginning, so that was quite cool. So, long story short, I thought there might be a problem with language. There wasn't. Yeah. Okay, on to the bit where I actually check quantitatively whether I think this was a good game. Spoiler alert, I think it was. But let's start off with the first question, which was, did I make any meaningful decisions? Yeah, I think I did. The decisions I were making, although they were based on luck in terms of the cards I got, I did have decisions to be made in terms of word length, in terms of whether I wanted to play a word with a lot of vowels versus a few vowels. There were a couple of decisions to be made there that did have an impact on how the game was played. So yes, I would say meaningful decisions were made. When it comes to multiple pathways to victory, i.e. were there different strategies that I could apply, were there different ways of scoring points, I'm probably going to say no. There are different strategies, don't get me wrong. Again, those meaningful decisions as to whether or not I should be playing words with lots of vowels or longer words versus shorter words, those are decisions I make which will lead to an overall strategy, yes. But in terms of trying to find different routes through the game, there is just one, which is basically play the game as it's designed, put down cards and win points. So yeah, in terms of number of strategies, probably not a lot there. Just one, but that's okay. One is enough. In terms of skill versus luck, Well, this is a little bit more tricky because I was going to say originally I was going to say it's quite well balanced. Then I realized after a few games that actually there's probably a lot more skill involved than there is luck. Although luck dictates what you get in your hand, it's skill that you use to determine how well you do with those cards. And it's a lot more skill, I think. I think the skill outweighs what you can do with your cards than the luck part does. It's kind of like backgammon, I suppose, in that way. You know, you can roll dice in the hope of something happening, but if you're a skillful player, even with bad dice, you can probably do quite well. And I think it's the same with Kiitos. If you're a seasoned player, I think you will have an advantage over a newbie because you're going to think slightly differently. You're going to come up with words that you know they're going to be able to complete for you simply by what you remember. So yeah, I think there's an advantage here on skill versus luck. Moving on to engagement. I had to look away there, sorry. Engagement, I haven't done this for a while. Engagement was awesome in this game. Rounds are very quick, very short. Play is very quick. It's a fast-moving game. Yes, there is a little bit of delay when you're trying to think of the next thing, but no one dragged on about it. It was great when we played it in our groups anyway. I would say I was always thinking about what I could do next. I didn't have time to look at my phone or wander off and have a sandwich, which was unfortunate. But anyway, there we go. Yes, was I engaged? Definitely I was. And finally, iconography and clear text. I mean, the cards are really good. I like them. Nice big letters. You can't mistake what they are. Even the Z, the N, the W, they were very clear which way round they were going to be played. I don't think there was a difficulty. The rule book was fairly simple to understand. I will jump in with a quick bit here about rule amendments. No, I won't, because I'm instead going to do that right at the end, which will come straight after this title card. Okay, before I was rudely interrupted, two things happened. Firstly, I completely failed to back up my work, subsequently decided to delete the video that I had recorded as my concluding thoughts, and here I am having to re-record it. And two, well, actually that was it, just one. I forgot to back up, so I'm having to redo it. Sorry, guys. But anyway, back to Kiitos. Kiitos, here we go. I wanted to give you my closing thoughts, so let me do that. Kiitos is a fun game. It's a great game. I think it's a great game to play with people who really like word games. So if you know someone who's into boggle or scrabble, I think they're going to really enjoy Kiitos. The benefit it has over scrabble or boggle, as I mentioned, is that actually it's pretty self-contained. It's a pack of cards. You can take it with you. It's a great game, I think, to play with people maybe a slightly older generation. I think people who aren't necessarily into sort of rolling dice board games want to play something fairly simple but has some level of thought and strategy to it. I think it's a great game for that. Now, there were a couple of niggles. We had to create two simple house rules. One was whenever you put down a word or said a word, a new word that is, you had to spell it. And that was simply because I think there was some confusion. For example, I think the word mail was said 2 or 3 times, or mailer, I think, or mails, that's what it was, mails. M-A-I-L-S or M-A-L-E-S. Both sound the same, to me anyway, and it caused a bit of confusion. So we decided that as a house rule, you would have to spell the word as well as put it down. The second small house rule that we had to create was a simple way of differentiating between negative and positive points. So as you pick up cards at the end because you couldn't complete or because you had completed a word, we simply decided that if they were face down, they would be counted negatively towards your point total at the end, and if they were face up, they would be counted positively towards your end. So 2 small house rules from us, but apart from that, pretty damn good. Anyway, look, guys, I'm going to go and ensure that I add this rather hurried section of my video to the end of my previous video and complete this edit to release today. So sorry about the delay there. I will get myself sorted for next week, hopefully. In fact, next week there may even be the video with Tom Vassell. Who knows? Until that time, though, folks, try to look after yourselves. Oh, and back up your work. Yeah, back up your work.